Hey there, gun people. I'm going to talk about this terrorist threat coming up here on the 4th of July. Now this flag back here, I ain't never owned one of these before, but as soon as the damn liberals in government started telling us we couldn't have them, I ordered a couple of them. So that's why I got it. So somebody's going to come over here and go, oh, you got that flag. You know what? I didn't have it till the government said you can't have it. Or they're trying to outlaw it. Anyway, my rebel side. So, if you read the newspaper, this 4th of July, what is it, 2015 here, the FBI has just issued these massive warnings. They've sent out notices. I've got buddies that still work at the PDs, and they've sent out these little notices saying, you know, be extra vigilant, you know, be ready for an attack, we think ISIS is active. And the way law enforcement, we get these warnings all the time. It's almost every day there's some warning. Whether it be, you know, in the military, it was different threat cons. You know, if we heard certain activity, if they picked up transmissions that mention a base too often, they might put that base on a higher alert, saying that, you know what, we're not real sure, but we're going to put you on a higher security level, a threat con level, a threat condition. So, and I think I don't even know if they still have those. They still have the colors for the Homeland Security for a while. They were putting us in terrorist colors, and I don't know if that went away or if that's still there or not. But if you're reading the news, the FBI is putting out press releases, and they're sending notices to PD saying this 4th of July, you know, they're always trying to create fear and make you think that they're on top of something. I mean, predicting that ISIS may attack on a U.S. holiday isn't really that difficult. I mean, any idiot could predict that. But you know, the government's going to go out there and make these predictions, so when it happens, they're going to go, oh, see, we were on top of it. So, I just want to talk about terrorists and terrorist behavior. Now, when I was in the military back in the 70s and 80s, it was, and through the 90s, terrorism was really high back in the 70s, 80s, or it had a peak, and then it kind of went down a little bit. And so terrorism has been around forever, and terrorism is nothing but the art of fear. You want, the way terrorists work is you want to create fear to stop people, stop your enemy from enjoying life, having freedoms, being able to go about their daily duties. You want to change their behavior, you influence them. Now, I think the technical definition is something about doing crime, violence, or something to carry out some political agenda. But basically, terrorism is creating fear. So when ISIS is out there cutting off heads and doing all their stuff, they're creating fear. They want to create fear. They want to modify people's behavior. They want to gain status that they're a legitimate threat and that you should fear them, you should respect them, and you should cooperate with them, and you should get what they want. Kind of like Obama's doing with Iran, you know, because he's an idiot. But anytime you get a terrorist or tyrannical government, kind of like the U.S. is moving to, it's all about creating fear. You'll comply, you'll do as we say, or we're going to make your life miserable. Now, terrorism, I mean, fear is a great motivator. On my horse channel, I'm always talking about fear and working with horses, and horses are great fear flight animals. But fear is an excellent motivator, and everybody uses it. Your boss uses it that you're going to get fired. If you don't do your job, you're going to get fired. You're going to get a shitty position. You're going to get reassigned. In law enforcement, if you want to move up to the better positions, you better suck up and do your job and make friends with the guys who get to promote you to the better positions. If you go against them, you're not going to get in a better position. You're going to be working midnight shift, the crappiest shift that nobody wants to work, you know, for the rest of your career. You'll be a stinking midnight road dog. But so fear is used throughout everything. Politics use it, the government uses it. Hey, you commit this crime, you're going to go to prison. We're going to create fear to keep you from committing crimes. Terrorists, when they try to impact countries in different political positions and influence policy, their creation of fear, I guess it's complex. On one hand, it's very simplistic, and then on the other hand, it's kind of complex. for terrorists, a lot of our terrorism back when I was in there was on airplanes. So we would train assaulting aircraft. Aircraft were going to get hijacked. So a lot of our training, our SWAT training, our military training in the Air Force, we had to, we had plans of all the planes. We knew exactly how to get in secret ways, what different techniques, rappelling off the side, jumping through different entrances, and all this crap on aircraft. Aircraft was, as a matter of fact, the FBI would come, when I was at Travis, they would come to Travis to train with our SWAT team because they don't have access to the aircraft like we do, and because we did it all the time, they would come out there to work with us. Now when the FBI came out, they came out with numbers. In the military, we'd assault a plane with 10, 12 people. The FBI would come out with 30 or 40 people. Because this government is big money, nobody cares, and they'll just play them overtime, whatever. So, when you're dealing with terrorism, specific threats like aircraft, military bases, cities, infrastructure, if they're going after your electronics, your sewage, or your water systems, or depending on what their threat and what they're good at. Remember, we've got all the gun control in the world, and 5 guys with box cutters took down how many planes, or how many guys there were on each plane with a stinking box cutter, and they killed thousands. That's the masterful art of terrorism. You use what you can to defeat a better, more prepared, better trained, well-equipped enemy. In Vietnam War, and a lot of people may not remember or know a lot of history. I don't know if they teach history in school anymore, except about GPD, GBT, whatever, how to have a rubber when you're 6 years old, whatever they're teaching now in school. So I don't even know if they cover history. But in the Vietnam War, we were fighting a relatively low technology enemy. Their tactics were kind of like the tactics of when we kind of had our independence and we fought. They would shoot and run, shoot and hide. They would use what they can. And in terrorism, it's all about you become stronger while your enemy becomes weaker. You create fear. If anybody's watched the movie Red Dawn, the first one and the second one, it's all about a foreign country coming here and taking over the U.S. and how they cordon off and they box up and they have these camps where they re-educate people. It's all about changing the mindset, creating a fear for a new person in charge. Okay, when our government declares martial law in an area, they're saying we have control. They get to run around and say, hey, if you're out on the streets at 10, you can shoot somebody. I mean, it used to be common. I haven't heard in a while. But back in the 60s, 70s, if you were caught looting, you could shoot somebody for looting. It was a done deal. If you were looting through somebody's stuff during a crisis or an emergency, you were legally shot and dead, no problems, no questions asked. And you know what? People didn't loot too much back then. Now they got all these rights, and if you shoot them in the wrong color, you're going to get sued and civil rights, and you'll be investigated like you're the bad guy. So, but terrorism is about, when gangs take over cities, that's a form of terrorism. And they create terror within a community. They create fear. They don't let people testify against other people. It's hard for the cops to go in a community. I remember talking to gang members on the street and talking to kids who weren't necessarily gang members, but they refused to talk to me because they're like, dude, man, I can get beat up just for talking to you. I don't want to talk to you. And I'd sit them on the curb, trying to talk to them, say, hey, I'm not going to tell anybody, come on, I just need some info, I'm trying to clean up your city, and man, I can't talk to you, man. If they find out I talk to you, and that's smart, because they're going to find out, because if he told me something that I could use, and I had to go get a warrant or do something, I would have to give his name on where I got the information, and if this went to court, they would know who he is, which is why on my videos say, don't talk to the cops. You become a witness, and once you become a witness, you lose control on anything you say or done, because now the government owns you. You are nothing but an asset to them that they can use. So terrorism is different, and the FBI is talking about cells and these different super cells, or whatever they're talking about, the splinter cells, or whatever they're calling them now, these different little cells in terrorism. And how terrorism used to work was, you had a group of, and people used to call the IRA, if you want to research the IRA and all the fighting over in Ireland, and I mean, those guys were two terrorist groups basically fighting each other. One was government, one wasn't. But when you're talking about terrorism and cells, there's a few definitions that kind of will help you understand what terrorists do and what terrorism is. A terrorist is a group of people, like an army or a military group. Oh, I got off track on Vietnam. But anyway, we were fighting the lower force of Vietnam, and they were doing severe damage because it was their home, it was their ground, they knew terrain, they were through the tunnels, they were smaller than us, they knew their area, they were used to jungle living. Our guys went over there, we were in a new environment, it wasn't our home, and when you're defending your home, you always have a little bit more vested interest than when you're defending someone else's. You know, we send our military all over the place. It's different when you're fighting in another country versus if you're fighting for your own country. Because when you're fighting for your own country, you're a much better adversary. So, terrorists. And when you talk about a sale, there can be multiple sales, and a sale is no more than, if you got military training, a squad. You know, if you go through the Army, it's a squad, company, battalion, Air Force, it's flight, a squad, flight, hell, I even forgot what it goes to, a group, whatever, squadron. So you have different levels of masses of people. Well, sometimes you have separate units going separate missions. To make you understand what a sale is, if we send in Delta Force or the Navy SEALs, that is technically a sale of the massive, if you were going to call the government a terrorist group or the military a terrorist group, and you had sales within that terrorist group. The SEALs would be one cell, the Rangers would be a different cell, and that's basically what the terrorists do. They have this big group, they all want the same thing, but they have these separate little units. They go out, these guys may be the bombers, these guys may be the intel, these guys may be getting funding, these guys may be doing a propaganda. So you have these different groups. Sometimes they know what each other's doing, and sometimes they don't. There's a term back in the 70s and 80s, and I don't know if they still use it, I'm sure they do, but in a terrorist is a term called a sleeper and a deep sleeper, okay? A sleeper is a person that the group doesn't know. So let's say there's 5 of us and we're going to take over an aircraft, and we're terrorists and we're going to take over this aircraft and hijack it. Well, there may be a sleeper in there, and a sleeper is somebody that may be out of the group. The leader knows that this guy is really a terrorist incognito. He's going to sit down, be quiet, not say anything, unless he knows that somebody's going to jump up. So if this guy's sitting next to some U.S. Marshal, nobody knows he's in the terrorist because he's just complying and playing the victim. And then this guy pulls out his gun and says, hey, I'm an air marshal, don't worry about it, I'm going to take these guys out. Then he would shoot this guy, get involved, or point him out. But unless it's to save the mission, the sleeper doesn't get involved. Now the difference between a sleeper and a deep sleeper is somebody in the initial group knows the sleeper's there. So they don't end up shooting him or tying him up or taking him out of the game. They want to keep him in play with the most people. So somebody in that group has to know the sleeper's there. A deep sleeper, nobody knows he's there. He's kind of like a failsafe. He may be the guy with the bomb. He may have a bomb on there that he's going to trigger, and if he thinks the mission's going to fail, none of the other guys know they're going to die. They don't know there's a bomb, and they don't know he's there. And he's the deep sleeper who's going to ensure the mission's success one way or the other. So, you know, the FBI is warning about these cells that are going to be activated by ISIS around the U.S. So people should be worried, scared, more vigilant on the 4th of July. Okay, and they seem to be concentrating on malls or large areas, which are great. I mean, that's just a normal terrorist attack. Terrorists aren't going to come, you know, in a small city, in a small area for several reasons. One, they stand out. You can't blend in. There's not enough people. It's more easy for them to get spotted, questioned, or seen. And they're not going to do a whole bunch of damage because they don't get a big bang for their buck. They want some big event. Just like the knuckleheads that blew up the Boston Marathon. You got a big event, a lot of people, those are prime terrorist attacks, okay? Now they're saying malls are a big terrorist attack. I can't remember a terrorist hitting a mall. Is it a good attack? Yeah, if I was a terrorist, you know where I'd be hitting? I'd be hitting schools. Because when you see dead kids, that makes an impact. So when you blow up and kill kids, people pay attention. And it becomes a big issue. And the media loves it, and it becomes a feeding frenzy. So, you know, I mean, most terrorist attacks get pretty good media. But, you let these terrorists, ISIS, start hitting schools and watch all these parents on the TV crying about losing their kids and you start showing dead babies, you're going to make big impact. So, where is a terrorist going to attack? Well, you know, they may be saying malls because they've intercepted talk either through digital texting, cell phones, landlines, emails, whatever. They may have heard shopping mall mixed in with a lot of communication. So that gives them a clue that, hey, you know what? Because we're targeting these guys in the terrorist group, because they're talking about an event, and because shopping mall is being mentioned, we're going to send out that you should be extra careful of shopping malls, because that might be hit. Okay, if they were talking about airports, they would probably send out a notice to airports saying, hey, we've picked up a lot of traffic. They're not going to say how they picked it up or what they did. They're just going to say, we have what we consider a credible threat to airports. So on airports on this day, be careful. Or we have a credible threat toward elementary schools, if they were picking up elementary schools in this. So when I'm reading this article about terrorists, 4th of July, be careful, be especially vigilant at shopping malls or large events, I'm kind of like, well, all terrorist attacks are going to happen at large events. You never hear a terrorist attack happen normally with one person. Just that's not what they want. They want big bang for the buck. And you know, these people who are attacking in ISIS, they're calling themselves, I mean, I call them kind of like splinter, you know, fragments of the organization that kind of agree with them that are on their own. Look, if I went out tomorrow and I said, I'm for ISIS, screw America, and I shot up a school, ISIS would claim credit for that, even though they never heard of me, they didn't know me or whatever. So they're going to take what publicity they can. And the government's going to blow it up because it's always good for the government when we have a terrorist attack and we can connect terror, we get more money, we get more resources, we can extend the investigation, we can do more, we can use the Patriot Act to invade freedoms, we can enact more things, we can ask for more laws, more regulations. You know, when you put terrorists or safety or life in danger in something in the government, man, that's just like a big fish throwing at a bank and you're reeling in the cash. So, I guess the reason for this video is like when I read this, I was like, is there people out there that really understand what a terrorist is versus what the government or what the media may tell you it is? A lot of terrorists are no more than whack jobs who kind of agree with something and they go out and they do something. Or they're easily convinced, you know, cult members. Would you call them a terrorist? You know, all the people that died at Ruby Ridge and Waco, the women that were getting raped, they were giving their kids to this guy so he could have sex with all these, I mean, a bunch of freaking weirdos. Not defending that they should have been burnt and killed by the feds, but you had a bunch of weirdos. I mean, could that be called a terrorist thing? Well, they weren't hurting anybody else, so they weren't terrorists. But to me, they were the same mindset. Very easily influenced, doesn't really fight for good. They've kind of got evil in their heart, and they're willing to do evil with very little kind of push or persuasion. And they may not even do it for money. They do it for glory, for the name, because they had their lunch money stolen as a kid, whatever. So, when you hear terrorists, I guess I just wish people would critically evaluate and kind of critically look at what the media puts out, because my default is if the media is putting it out, the government wants them to put it out, or the government gave it to them to put that out. So my default for the media is automatically to question it with a critical eye and say, not only do I not believe it, I don't think it's the truth, we're not getting the whole story, and I wonder who's behind this story. So I read things, and you know, some people go, oh, that's paranoid, you're a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, okay. Conspiracy theorists. Questioning known liars. Everybody knows the government's never lied to us, right? So we should believe whatever they say. And we should believe the mouthpieces of the government, the media, who only reports what the government gives them. We have no investigative reporting now. Nobody's going out and trying to question, you know, the government, what do you know? We want sources. Where did you get this? None of that happens anymore. The media prints whatever the government sends them. The government says, hey, put this out. The FBI is worried about terrorist attacks at malls. Guess what? Every paper you read now is going to say about the same thing. Because the government gave them that, and that's what they're reprinting. There's no investigation, there's no nothing. So, I guess I just want to expand a little bit on terrorism, how they work, get you a little bit better mind frame on if I mention terrorists, or if you hear the term terrorist, or if you read something about terrorism, maybe you'll have a little bit better understanding about how they work, what their goals are, etc. Kind of went on with a couple of little things. Hopefully that helps. My flag to say screw the government. All right, we'll end that there.